All right, everybody, let's get started. We're gonna make some Animal Crossing characters. Yay! So, if you're gonna be participating in the workshop and you're not a member of Animation Club eBoard, please go to this side of the room because all the computers here are already set up and they have the project files downloaded. If you're working on if you're not working on one of these computers, you can go into the animation Discord. I just sent the link to the drive that has all the files. I was having some trouble downloading though, which is why I have all these computers sent it. But yeah, anyway, so today we are going to be learning about how to surface things, how to make materials, which is basically defining how 3D objects interact with light. So first things first, people on this side of the room, y'all are eBoards. Is it okay if I just like get going? Okay, cool. So then, y'all should already have Substance Painter open. It's this program. So first I'm going to show you how to make a new document. So File, New, and then you'll get this new project window pop up. So the template you want to be using is called ASM PBR Metallic Roughness. It should be the first one in the menu. This is just like the bare bones, basic, like normal material workflow. Next up is File. So this is where you select the 3D model that you want to be working with. So on your desktop, there should be a folder called like Animation Club 3D Paint Workshop. And in that folder, there's a couple 3D models. I'm going to be working with the eagle model because I want to do cool things with the beak. Feel free to pick a different model if you want, but if this is your first time using Substance and you want to follow along with me, I would also pick the eagle model. All right. Next up is document resolution. We want to crank this all the way up to 4096 because we want to have really high quality textures and these computers can handle it. Last thing is set the normal map format to OpenGL. Don't really worry too much about what this is. I'm just having us all set it to the same thing for standardization purposes. And then make sure that everything else in here is unchecked. And then click OK to create a new project. And so now you should see your 3D model loaded into Substance. Well, actually, could we also have like one or two eBoard people just walking around in case anyone needs help? Thank you. Now, the first thing you need to do whenever you open any new Substance project is called baking your mesh maps. So basically what that does is it tells Substance to go through and calculate where all the shadows should be, and it just makes your model look a lot better. So go to Edit, Bake Mesh Maps, and then don't touch any of these settings, they're already fine, and click Bake Selected Textures. And then what it'll do is it'll go through and do all the lighting calculations it needs to make your model look nice. So you can see now the shadows are better. If your model is looking kind of garbagey, it's probably because you forgot to bake the mesh maps. That's usually a good way to make things look better. So if you've ever used any piece of 3D software before, the way that you navigate in Substance will probably be kind of familiar to you. What you want to do is hold down Alt, and then if you left click, you can rotate the camera. Middle click, you can pan, and right click, you can zoom. So just take a moment to view your beautiful model from all angles because we are about to make it gorgeous. Okay, so I guess now I'm just gonna like give you a quick overview of what we're looking at here. So this big window right here is the asset library. This is just this big box of materials that come with Substance. They're really fun because most of them already look good. So you can just drag them onto your model and work with them. And then here we've got the 3D viewport. It shows what your model looks like. And over here, we've got the layers palette. So if you've ever used a program like Photoshop or Krita or Procreate or any other like layer-based painting program, the way that this is laid out will probably be familiar to you. Basically, the way that you make textures in Substance is you take a bunch of layers and you layer them on top of each other. Now, I'm guessing that y'all probably get what this part of the window is, because it's just a 3D model. But what on earth is this thing? This weird unfolded view of our model. This is called a UV. And it's basically what would happen if we took our model, cut it up, and then folded it out flat. Now, the reason we need UV maps is because under the hood, 3D textures are always stored as flat images. Like you can't actually make a 3D picture. That's not a thing. So the computer needs some way of knowing how to take our flat images and folding them up and around the model to create a texture. Now, the nice thing about Substance is that you don't actually have to worry about the UVs too much because Substance lets you just paint directly onto the model. Like that's why people in industry use Substance. It's just way easier to paint directly onto the model. So we're not going to need to worry too much about the UVs, but I just wanted y'all to be aware of what they are. And actually, if you do paint onto the model, you'll notice that whenever I paint, for example, onto his beak here, the UVs update too, because these are basically two views of the same thing. And so sometimes if you have like a weird nook or cranny that you're trying to get into, it can be helpful to, instead of painting on the model, oh, where are we? You could paint on the UVs. So that is the basics of navigating in Substance. Now let's make a material. So the most basic kind of material you can make in Substance is called a fill layer, which is basically just the Substance equivalent of a solid color. But because we're working with materials, there's a little bit more to it than color. There's other ways to talk about how things interact with light. So to make a new fill layer, you want to click on this paint bucket icon in the layers palette. And that will create a new empty fill. Whoops. All right. And so if you expand this properties panel down here a bit and scroll down, you'll see that there are 5 options that we can control in a fill layer. And so these are the 5 things that come together to define how a 3D object interacts with light. The first one is color. This one is the easiest. It's just what color it is. So if you click on this and mess with the color of your model will change. All right. The next 2 are roughness and metallic. Now, these ones are a little weirder. Roughness and metallic work together to determine how shiny your material is. Roughness makes things shiny the way that plastic is shiny, and metallic makes things shiny the way that metal is shiny. I'll show you. So, for example, if we crank the roughness all the way down, we end up with this glossy look. But if we crank the metallic all the way up, we end up with this very reflective look. I definitely suggest just sort of messing around with these sliders a bit, because the only way to really get a sense for the difference between roughness and metallic is to just sort of mess around with it. Now, the last 2 properties in here are height and normal. And these control how bumpy the texture looks. Basically, what height and normal do is they change the way that the material interacts with light to create the illusion of bumpiness without actually changing the shape of your model. So for example, if we just plug like a random thing into our height map, you'll see that this model now looks really bumpy, but it isn't actually. Like if we zoom in on the silhouette, like the outline is still the same. It's just because the way that the model interacts with the light is different, it looks like it's got a textured surface. And so this can be a really good way to add detail. So in summary, we've got color. What color is the object? We've got shininess, which is controlled by metallic and roughness. And we've got bumpiness, which is controlled by normal and bump. So these are like the 5 properties that you're going to need to worry about whenever you're thinking about surfacing a material. I wanted to go over that just so that whenever they come up later, you'll know what they are. But to start out with, we can just drag in a material from this palette over here and we'll be good to go. So right now what I want you all to do is just look through this palette on the left and pick out a material that you want to use as the base. Like what color, what do you want your character's skin to look like? I'm going to use this calfskin material because I think it would be funny and gross. So you can just take it and drag it onto the model. And then if you go into the properties panel, you'll see some options that you can mess around with to change the way that it looks. So just play around with it for a bit until you get something that you sort of like. And then I'll be coming around to help y'all if you need it. All right. Do we all have something on our model?
Yeah, sure is.
Okay, cool. So this is fun, but we don't want our character to be all one material. We want to have variety. And so the way that we do that is by adding more materials onto it and then masking them. So what I'm going to be doing is I want to make the beak a different material from the rest of the body. So if you want to follow along, you can do that, or you can just pick a different body part that you want to work with. I'm doing the beak. So first thing I'm going to do is pick the material that I want to be. I want to use brass. Oh no, what just happened? So let's see, I'm going to deselect this. So you want to take the new material you're working with and then drag it on. And then, so that's going to cover the entire model. That makes sense. It's the layer on top. We don't want this. So the way that we can tell substance to make this material only apply to the way that we can tell substance to make this material only apply to a beak is by using a mask. So first thing we want to do is click on this folder icon to create a group. Then we want to put the beak material into our group. I'm going to call this beak because it's good to stay organized in substance. It's very easy for layers to get out of control quickly. So the next step is you right click it and then click add black mask. And you'll notice that a new thumbnail has popped up next to the folder icon. So this thumbnail here, the one on the left, that's like a preview of what the material looks like. The one on the right is a mask. So this is basically telling substance where to apply the material, where black means don't apply it and white means do apply it. So with this mask selected, what we want to do is paint the areas of the model that we want our material to affect white. Now, since the beak is a pretty geometric object, I think the best way to do this is with this tool. It's called the poly select tool. It's the fourth one from the top. It's like a square with an arrow in it. What this lets you do is select parts of your mesh and fill them in all at once. So at the top of the screen, you can set this slider to white. Now make sure that you have your mask selected here. And then you can start filling in polygons. And you'll see that as you add white to the mask, your material starts to show up. Now, there's different options at the top here. This one will select individual faces. My personal favorite is the one on the far right, the square with checkers in it. That will select, basically you'll just select chunks of your mesh. So you can grab this part of the beak. You can grab here. Please grab the inside too. All right, perfect. And then I'm just going to give y'all some time to catch up. So everybody, make the beak a different material from the rest. All right, it seems like people are pretty ready to move on. So if you look at this texture I've put on, you'll see that the bumpiness of the calf skin has like bled through onto the bumpiness of the beak. And that's because of a thing called blend modes. So again, if you've used like Photoshop or other painting programs before, then you've probably used blend mode before. There are things like multiply, pass through, whatever, that you set in your layer to define how your layers interact with each other. So basically what we want this beak material to do is replace all of the materials below it. We want it to completely fill them in. So if we click on our folder here, and then we click on this drop down right here, we can pick our blend mode. And we want to set our blend mode to replace. Oh no, that didn't do anything. The reason is because there's actually 5 different properties that we have to set the blend mode for, because this isn't a normal painting program. We're not just dealing with color. We're also dealing with height, roughness, metallic, and normal. So what you need to do is go through each of these options in the drop down, and for each one, click on your beak folder and change the blending mode to replace to make sure that it is replacing. Oh no, it's still bleeding through. This was unexpected. So the last thing you need to do to make sure that your materials don't bleed through each other is if you scroll down to your material properties, you'll see that some of these things are enabled and some of them are not. In this case, for the brass material, height and normal are disabled. And what this means is that this brass material just will not do anything to affect the bumpiness of the materials below it. So the way that we can fix that is by making sure that all of these options are enabled. So if we enable height and we enable normal, then now this brass material will be setting all 5 properties of the beak. And because we set the blending mode to replace, it will be replacing the properties of all of the layers below it. So we only get beak here. We only get the gold. So go through all of your properties and make sure that your beak material is replacing all of the stuff below it. Okay, we have one more thing to talk about, which is the moment you've all been waiting for. Brushes! Yay! Now we can actually do painting and stamping and stuff. So whenever you're working with brushes in Substance, you want to approach them to a similar way that we did masking on the beak. So what I want to do here is give this bird some eyes. The first thing I want to do is create a material, or sorry, is create a layer for the eyes. So I'm going to create a new fill layer, and then I'm going to make sure that it's set to replace. Sorry, not do that. And then let's see, I want to set the color to white. I think everything else looks fine. And then I'm going to put this inside of a folder. Let's call it eyes. And then I'm going to add a black mask to this folder. And then now we can tell Substance where we want the eye material to show through. So instead of selecting the polygon fill tool, this time we want to select the brush tool. Yay! So you can just sort of paint onto your material to tell it where you want the eye material to show through. This eye looks kind of bad. And the way that we can make it more fun is by changing the shape of the brush. That's right here. If you go into your paint properties, which is this tab right here, and scroll around for a bit, you should find an option called alpha. Substance has a ton of different shapes that you can use for your brush. And you just scroll through and find one you like. And let's see. I was using the heart earlier because I think it's fun to give a character heart eyes. Do that. Make your brush bigger using the size slider at the top. And then you can just stamp it right on there like that.
Whoa, cool.
It's a really big heart. Oh, also, for stuff like eyes and faces, it can be helpful to have symmetry. So if that's something you're interested in, the symmetry button is this pair of triangles facing each other right at the top of the screen. If you click that, you'll get this red line down the middle of your character. And now everything you do on one side will also happen to the other, like that. Then we can set the blend modes again to make sure that the eyes only affect the eyes. Place. 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 Oh yeah, right. So the nice thing about handling your layers like this is that whenever you're painting with the brush, what you're actually doing is painting onto the mask of the folder. You're telling it where to apply this material. So if you want to change the color of the character's eyes, you want to open up the folder, go to your material, and then you can change the material like this. You generally don't want to paint materials directly onto layers because it makes them very hard to edit. And whenever you're working with materials, being able to tweak things a lot is pretty important. I'll give them like nice yellow eyes. Yeah. Like you should be making a ton of masks. That is normal. That's the good workflow. That's the good workflow. Masks and folders everywhere. Okay, there's one more thing I want to talk about before I set you all free to create your amazing characters, which is rendering. This is the easiest part. It's fun, kind of. So in order to render out your character, which basically means save out a nice high quality image of them, you want to click on this camera icon at the top right of the screen. And that will open up the render view. Oh, it's going to take a hot minute, probably because I have Zoom open. There it goes. So, yeah, no, the backgrounds and subsequents are really fun. I definitely would encourage you to mess around with them. My personal favorite is the bus stop. So you can change the background of your render by clicking on this like laptop with the gear in it on the far right. And then next to environment map, click on the button that says panorama. And then there's a couple different options you can choose from. My favorite one is bus garage. Yay! And then the render settings that I recommend are don't touch your min samples, set your max samples to like 200, and then just crank the max time all the way. And then if your model is looking grainy, increase the number of samples until it doesn't look grainy anymore. And it will take a little bit to render. It's done whenever the status says done. And once it's done, you can click save render and you can save out a picture to take home. Oh yeah, and also post it to the animation Discord so everyone can see your beautiful, horrible creations.
Hey.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. But anyway, that is all I have to teach you about Substance. I'm going to be walking around for the rest of our time if you have any questions about stuff, because I know that was a lot.
I did something.
Also, in the project files folder that's on all of your guys' desktops, there's a document called the Animation Club 3D Paint Workshop, and that has all of the stuff I just went through written out, if that was easier. All right, everybody, if you haven't already started rendering, you really should start rendering to make sure that you get it done before the end of the workshop. So again, you can get to the render view by clicking on this camera up here. Then set your min samples to whatever, your max samples to like 200 or something, and then your max time cranked all the way. And then move the camera to wherever you want, and then just let it sit until it says status done at the top. And then you can click on save render to save your render to your computer. Make sure to post it in the animation Discord so we can see all of your beautiful creatures. I will say, whenever you save out the render, it doesn't save the background. So if you want a picture of your model with the background, just take a screenshot. And then while we are waiting for all of our beautiful animals to render, I've got a couple announcements for Animation Club. First thing, we have merch, we have stickers and stuff. If you want it, talk to John Ma. Next announcement is Animation Final Crit is going to be on Friday, May 6th from 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. in this room. So that's just going to be all of the animation classes presenting their work from the semester. If you want to come, I would highly recommend getting there at 9 because that's going to be Anim Basics, and the Anim Basics talent show is always really fun because the Anim Basics people always design really fun monsters. Is anybody here in Anim Basics, by the way? Yay! Yeah, no, very excited to see. Yeah, no, very excited to see y'all's stuff. And then anyway, last announcement. This is our last Anim Club meeting of the semester, so thank y'all for coming. Keep an eye out for a feedback survey because we want to know how to make our club even better for y'all next year. Anyway.
Thank you, Olly.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for making beautiful animals with me. I hope y'all learned about materials.